Thank you for coming tonight. And I am Dr. Cynthia Clark. I'm an acupuncture physician, I'm an applied clinical nutritionist, I'm the creator of Energy Evolution, and I'm the president of Longevity Wellness. And tonight we're going to be talking about anti-cancer herbs. That is to say, we're going to talk about it from two different ways. We're going to talk about it from a Chinese medicine perspective and also from an essential oils perspective. So in Chinese medicine, because that's my favorite wheelhouse to sit in Chinese medicine, we talk about some specific differentiations. We talk about things like, does anybody know what kind of differentiations we might use for tumors?
Environment causes.
What might be a Chinese medicine pattern differentiation? It might have a word in it like a temperature or a substance.
Cold?
And heat.
Right, yes, we can have internal cold, we can have damp heat, and we can have phlegm. So, yay, phlegm! And phlegm can be formed from either too hot or too cold inside the body. So when we need to move things, so if you think about phlegm, right, like, no, making you choke up. And it's not even a Hallmark movie. If you think about things like phlegm, like what you cough up, that's a pretty loose kind of phlegm. Internally, inside the body, what happens is that phlegm hardens and becomes a nodule, and then it can become a tumor. So, these are the terms that we use in.
Watch out.
Hey, thanks.
Wow, that was exciting.
I have twice said that the kindest words ever said to me were "watch out." Thanks. You can just leave it over there. Thank you. So inside the body, internally, what's happening is we get these tumor phlegm consolidations, and that can happen either when we have internal cold or we have internal heat, because the heat is going to cook that phlegm and it's going to turn it into that tumor, and then the cold is going to consolidate it. So what this means is that when we talk about cancer, and one of the ways that damp heat or internal cold or toxic heat presents is through cancer and tumors in different parts of the body. And so a lot of times we hear about people that do amazing things and they cure cancer naturally. What are some of the things that you've heard people do that help them cure cancer naturally?
Breathing.
Herbs,
Breathing.
Exercise.
coffee grounds. Anybody heard of the coffee enema? Fasting or juice fasts.
Eliminating bad foods.
Eliminating
So
bad foods.
basically dietary.
And do you know people that have done these things or some of these things and it hasn't worked for them?
Yes.
Yeah, there is that. And why is that?
Different constitution.
Right, different constitutions, different reason for the tumor to have been caused in the first place. For example, the tumor that's caused by internal cold is going to be treated very differently, is going to respond differently to the plants that are very warming, typically, versus the tumor that was caused by that heat that cooked it, which is going to need cooling. Okay, so this is Chinese medicine, and of course, we want to use all of the paradigms and the windows available to us with as much depth as possible. So another paradigm that we're going to look at, you can see my little picture over on the side here. It's okay, you don't need to change it. I'm just gonna speak to it. It's actually the perfect analogy though, isn't it? Like you're walking along in life, you're just doing your thing, and then suddenly something that you had a blind spot about like comes and attacks you, and that's kind of what cancer is, right? Like I'm trucking along and I'm doing my thing, and this thing that I kind of remember at some point thinking maybe this leg might be a little bit weak of this tripod, but usually it's fine and it's no big deal, suddenly gives out and like ambushes you. And that's exactly what happens when we're trucking along and we're doing life and we're living life and we're doing the things that we love, and then something gives out in a blind spot that we weren't expecting. So it's the perfect analogy to what it is that we're talking about right now. So from another perspective, when we talk about cancer cells, what do cancer cells do that make them so unwieldy
Proliferate.
They proliferate. They just grow and grow, 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 grow. They're like weeds, especially weeds here in Florida that like never stop. You just have this like this jungle in your yard if you're not careful. Somebody told me the other day that like just nothing grew. They were gonna have to very carefully plant because nothing grew here, and I was like, tell me about your yard. And they said, well, we have the weed killer cloth down, and then we have this, and it's like, well, but you don't actually have access to your ground. Yes, ma'am.
A weed is a plant in the wrong place. So how does that relate to the cancer cells proliferating?
Such a great, thank you for that. That's so beautiful. I have a belief that all disease is something in the wrong place, something where it doesn't belong. You know, all of these things that people talk about that are like absolutely terrifying, like E. coli, oh my God, you're gonna die. Candida, oh my God, you're gonna die. You're screwed, that's it, life's over. They're all in our body. They're in the place that they're supposed to be. When they're in a place they're not supposed to be, that's when we have problems. And so when we talk about proliferation, like there's a whole lot of anti-aging techniques that are designed around proliferating cells in the body, right? So generally we want to grow. However, we don't want to grow those cancer cells. So when we talk, okay, so what are other? You've got the cheat sheet over here to my left, or your right if you're watching on the camera at home. What are some of the other properties? And I'm going to come back to this question about the cancer cells and where they belong, because there's more to the story, and it's a really good story.
Mutate.
Mutate, yes, they mutate. They are anaerobic, so they prefer not oxygen. They mutate, they change. Cancer cells do this really interesting thing. They know that the immune system is going to kick them out. And so what they do, even our cells like the taste of sweet. And so cancer cells dress up in particular types of sugar cells, and that forms a mask and keeps our immune system from recognizing them as cancer cells. And so that's how they like sneak past our immune system, is because they've gotten all dressed up for us, and then they've moved along. Do any of you have cancer cells in your body right now? Mm-hmm. We all do. Yep. They're all the time, they're being created and then eliminated, because our body has a natural eliminate the mutations process. The problem with the cancer cells when we get cancer, so to speak, is that there's been a breakdown in the elimination process. Something has kept the cell from being broken down.
The way I learned it is they're like illegal aliens. Once they
Excuse me, sir, that's not politically correct.
Well,
Your statement is undocumented.
so once they get in, they kind of get false identities and stuff like that, so they don't get found out, and that's how the immune system can detect it. So that's one way I learned it.
Got it. Well, that's perfect analogy to what we're talking about here. Okay, there's a third component to cancer cells that make them difficult to clear. What is that?
They eat up all your oxygen.
Yeah, they oxidate. They're part of the oxidant, and that's why the antioxidants work so well to counteract them. So I wanted to share with you one of the best. All right, I am skilled in a medicine that was created 3,000 years ago or more, depending on which ancient text you're consulting, or which scholar, which ancient text you're consulting. And so, like, literally, when I started Chinese medicine school, the very first thing that I found out was that the internet was of almost no use to me at this time in studying my medicine, because the information I had to study was ancient texts. Mm-hmm. And it was like, that's really, really crazy. Even this past weekend, I met a gentleman who is from Taiwan. He's a master herbalist from Taiwan, and he was telling me that his brother had translated one of our classic texts, the Shanhan Lung, into my modern Chinese, and that it was a seminal text, and it was very, very relevant. I was like, I don't speak Chinese, I don't read Chinese, I want to read this book. The information was so unavailable to me. By the way, the very next thing that happened was that I happened to meet a student of his brother's who had taken his notes in English. and kindly agreed to start training me in a little bit. So realizing that I come from this framework of like meeting a master herbalist at a conference and getting the hookup to
Wow.
the translation of the text, like that's the world that I come from Chinese medicine, and it's very powerful and it's worth it. One of my teachers at the conference moved to China to study Chinese and to get her PhD in medicinal herbalism in China, and her husband had moved there. This is the kind of work that people have to go to in order to truly understand the culture and the nature of the plants and the medicines being studied in the practice. So please know it is with exceptional gratitude that I share what I'm about to say with you, which is in America, if you were studying anything on the Western medicine side, including Western research of herbs by their Latin names, then there's a phenomenal resource called PubMed. PubMed, and what I'm going to hand out to you is an excerpt from an article that is on PubMed. You don't have to run into any herbalist at a concert, at a conference, and ask if his brother might have translated anything he translated any archaic text into some modern language. You don't have to go to any of that trouble. I think this fellow up here might need one. You can just look this up on the internet, and that is indeed what we did. What we find is that in this particular article that I really like because it's called Anti-Cancer Properties of Essential Oils and Other Natural Products. And I want to read some of this to you. EO stands for essential oils. Are complex and multifunctional substances with plant origin, which have been used for thousands of years for their role in the prevention and treatment of various ailments. Yeah.
When I lived in Africa, there have been herbalists, of course, they have different names, but very much the same thing.
I was waiting for you to tell me that it was passed down through oral history.
Well, it is.
that the African herbalism is passed down. Oh, okay, well, so you went up to me. There's not even like
It just, I all of a sudden I was transported back there, and I just remembered it.
even more. What I mean is even more difficult to, as an American, to gain access to that knowledge. Even more difficult than the Chinese guy who translated the text is. It's an oral tradition, and shaman medicine is a lot like that too. Chemically, EOs are aromatic plants' secondary metabolites with several roles. Defense against herbivores, insects, and microorganisms. So what that means is that the plant has its own little defense and immune system. For example, it might emit a small amount of a toxin that's going to give that animal a bad trip and say, maybe I don't want to do that again. In that tiny amount, when a human who is much, 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 much larger eats it, then it actually has an adaptogenic effect, which means that we get stronger because it stresses us, but in a tiny, tiny, tiny way, and that tiny, tiny, tiny stress helps make us stronger. Okay. Communication with plants of the same species and signaling within the plant in response to environmental stimuli. As each plant species or subspecies has evolved to protect itself from a particular predator or groups of predators, each plant produces its own specific signature mixture of EO chemical substituents. This can contain from 20 to 60 constituents at varying concentrations, which have 2 or 3 primary constituents. There are approximately 3,000 EOs from over 2,000 plants, with around 300 EOs possessing known biomedical features. Together with the plant species, the developmental stage and aromatic compound extraction methods have a direct influence on the composition of EOs, which explains the variability of components in the reported EOs. The thing I want you to understand here is that it has to be the whole plant. And we find this in Chinese medicine, we find this in Chinese herbology, we find this in Western herbology, we find this in essential oils, study after study after study after study. Somebody, maybe some large organization that makes a lot of money off of single molecules will try to identify the active ingredient in a particular oil. And time after time after time, no matter which angle we're looking at the problem from, consistently across the board, every single time, it doesn't work that way. When we do that, we experience side effects in the body. And it's hard on our bodies because that single molecule that is the active ingredient bounces around in our bodies like a pinball machine, and it sets off all these different reactions. When we take the whole plant, no matter what paradigm, every single study shows that the therapeutic benefit comes from the whole plant. And that's how it is here too. It has to be the whole plant. Due to the large range and complex blend of the EO constituents as well as their many functional groups, it is thought that EOs do not possess a specific single cellular target, with each complex mixture initiating different cellular extracts through their major constituents. However, it is important to consider the minor constituents of an EO and the different cellular effects exhibited when the constituents are combined in the EO blend versus the isolated constituents. So that's what we're talking here. Does it work as a whole plant, as the essential oil, or does the isolated constituent work? Can you take the active ingredient of lavender and do the lavender things with it? So this particular study, so what they did is they took a tea of white and green tea, and then they took 9 of the constituents of the white and green tea, and they put them together to make like a fake tea that was a blend of just those 9 ingredients. The artificial tea exhibited a lesser anti-mutagenic effect than the whole tea extracts, the potent mutagen. Furthermore, it has been shown that EOs extracted from the tea tree, eucalyptus, and thyme plants reduced herpes simplex virus by more than 96%. And when the individual constituents were taken alone, they were far less effective. Okay, so to the fun part of the presentation, oils that rock for anti-mutagenic, anti-proliferative, and antioxidants. Number 1, yew. Hi, sweetheart, come on in. Yew, its mechanism of action is based on the induction of a mitotoxic arrest.
next to you.
Good, so it's a therapeutic agent, either as a single agent or a combination therapy strategy, so you can take yew by itself or you can take it with other things. It is specifically indicated for ovarian, breast, and pancreatic cancer. It has special properties. Is it possible that different plants could point to different parts of the body?
Yep.
That's actually a big part of our study of Chinese herbs is, does this go up or does this go down? Which meridian does it go to? And we have to memorize all of those things in order to take our board exams. And then they created phone apps that make it very easy to remember these things. Eucalyptus and citronella, whoever created TCM Clinicaid, thank God for you. Eucalyptus and citronella, these are effective microtubule disrupting compounds. So we're moving towards apoptosis and we're breaking apart the cancer cell here. This is an interesting one. Litsea is indicated for lung cancer. And so it's a beautiful one to put in your, what?
Diffuser.
Your diffuser, right, because then you can just like
Breathe it in.
exactly, and you can combine it with that lovely eucalyptus that we were just talking about and help even more. Thyme, which is an antioxidant, again moving towards apoptosis, and this study was 22 pages. You're getting a couple of pages of some relevant paragraphs in order to see. So you can get into the nuts and bolts of it a little bit more, but the bottom line is the last sentence there. This dual mechanism offers anti-proliferative as well as antioxidant properties, and the vapor can be inhaled directly to the site of cancer in the lung, offering a clear advantage in administration. And then finally, my favorite essential oil, for those of you that have seen me present before or watched my videos, frankincense, also known as boswellia. This is an anti-proliferative. These extracts were shown to be cytotoxic to 3 breast cancer lines. So we can get very specific and we can, in this case, we were looking at the T47D, the MCF7, and the MDA MB231. So there's all these different varying cancer types, going back to the beginning of our conversation about why some cancers are hot and some cancers are cold and some cancers are phlegm and some cancers are damp. We have the same, we have similar kinds of classifications in the Western world. So Boswellia is particularly excellent for breast cancer. What questions do you have?
Oh, excuse me. I got two things I'm thinking of. First off, back in the day, American physicians, and we're talking people in the 17 and 1800s, were botanists, were interested in plants. I don't know if you all know that. And
Thank
of
you for
course,
bringing that up.
along came the AMA, and you know, all that just got swept under the rug. The other thing is, if you go to the scrub, that's Florida's desert, Polk County, the road right past this park, and you will see plants with circles around them. Just go to Hickory Lake Scrub, walk in and you'll see them. Those are the chemicals that the plants give off to keep other plants from proliferating. This is my territory. It's very competitive in the desert. Dry, rainfall, sparse, few nutrients in the soils, and so they put that. I thought you'd be interested in that.
That is fascinating. I love it when we can see things, right? Like we talk about
So
these
you
kind
could
of
stop
abstract
and
things.
just see this. You could see these sort of kind of whitish circles around this.
Very cool. Maybe we'll have to take a field trip.
Yeah.
Amen. Awesome. Well, thank you. Would you be kind enough to, and